Tailormation!
Hello, John here. I'm about to start work on the next episode of 60-Second Bible Stories, and I thought it'd be really cool to do a kind of mini behind-the-scenes series just showing you how I go about making each episode. So today I thought I'd show you the process that I go through creating the backgrounds for each episode. And I'll do that on the computer.
So the first thing I do is always open up my storyboard and kind of remind myself of all the backgrounds that I've got to create for this new animation. Once I'm kind of happy with that, I got to pick one. In this case, I'm going to go for this beach scene with the two boats and the two disciples and start with this background. I then go into Photoshop and I always create a new file and make it roughly 2 or 3 times bigger than the actual size of the video. That way, if I zoom in or zoom out during the animation, the image won't pixelate or go all blurry, which is obviously crucial for a good high quality production. And now in Photoshop, what I always do is start with a fresh layer and a kind of bluey coloured pencil and kind of just sketch out the background based on the storyboard picture that I can see underneath. Obviously this is kind of sped up now. I think it's about 2000% faster than actual real life, so it's really quick. So once I'm happy with the sketch, I then move on to the colouring. And here I'm starting with the hillside. And as you can see, I'm creating the hills with about 3 or 4 layers of textured colour, a bit like what you do if you were using watercolour or oils or something like that. And then once I'm happy with it, I cut it out to kind of give a final clean edge. I then start working on the sky in the kind of same way, using a textured brush with 2 or 3 different colours. And then once I've got all that sorted, I then copied the sea from a previous background and add that to a new layer to try and keep it looking consistent. And then just adding a few extra layers just to kind of make it the right size. And after that, again, I move on to the shoreline. I'm not going for too beachy. I'm kind of going for quite a light coloured, sort of stony, gravelly look. So I've gone for kind of browns and whites and greys, that kind of colour. And once again, I cut that out when I'm finished with it, adding a few little sort of stony details. Now moving on to the boxes that are next to the boats. Now for this I'm actually using a texture which I think was a scanned piece of cardboard. And what I do is I import it and then cut it out and then add some sort of shadow and extra lines just to kind of make it look a bit more realistic. Once I've done those, I move on to the other boxes, which are the sort of little boxes that the disciples are sitting on. Again, using the same technique, adding a bit of shadow and shade just to kind of make it feel like they're actually sitting in the environment. Once I've done that, I'm moving on here to the sort of poles that the fish are hanging over the fire on. And again, I'm using another texture, and this actually was my a door in my front room. I took a picture, and I've cut it out, and I'm using it to sort of give a nice wood effect. After that, I now move on to the fire itself, and I'm colouring each individual log to kind of give a bit of difference, a bit of variety in the wood. Again, I'm using a normal flat brush for this one. So once I'm happy with that, I then move on to the boats themselves. And for the boat, I used a wood texture, which I think was a chopping board. And here I import it in 3 or 4 times and then create each individual plank from a different part of the texture to try and give as much variety as possible. So that's the front of the boat done, and I'm now moving on to the back part of the boat, which I then colour slightly darker to kind of give a bit of a shadowy effect. Once that's done, I add the kind of front and the back of the boat, again using the door texture just to kind of give a bit of variety, and then the mast as well. Here I'm colouring in the sail, also using flat colours with texture on top, and again adding a bit of shadow so that it looks as real as possible. Once I'm happy with the boat, I flatten that image into one and then start working on the second boat using exactly the same principle, cutting out each plank on the boat individually to kind of give as much variety, and then moving on to the back part of the boat and the sails again. So this background took about 1 hour 45 minutes to create from scratch, and this is quite a complicated one. Most of them take between half an hour and 2 hours to make, and this film itself I think has about 5 or 6 different backgrounds, so it would take me about 2 days in total to get all the backgrounds ready for the animation. And here at last is the final background. which I'm really pleased with in the end.
Right, I think that's it for today's video. I hope that's been interesting. If you have any comments about how I go about making the backgrounds, please do leave a comment below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And please do subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the red button in the corner there. And if you'd like to watch any of my previous videos, you can watch them all over on my website, which is taylormotion.co.uk, or by clicking on the button just down here in the corner. And I'll be back very shortly with a new video. Alright, bye for now.